The YouTube Prank by David Eden, based on true events. Chapter 1. The Man in the Airport. The fluorescent lights of Kuala Lumpur International Airport buzzed like dying wasps, casting their sickly pallor over the morning crowd. Kim Jong-nam moved through the terminal with the practiced ease of a man who had made airports his second home. Or perhaps his first, considering he no longer had a country to call his own. February 13th, 2017, 8:59 a.m. The digital displays flickered with departure times, and Jong-nam's eyes tracked to his flight, Air Asia to Langkawi. Another island, another temporary refuge. He'd grown accustomed to this nomadic existence, this perpetual state of almost belonging. The eldest son of Kim Jong-il, once heir apparent to a nuclear-armed kingdom, now reduced to a ghost haunting duty-free shops and business lounges. He approached the self-check-in kiosk, his fingers already reaching for his passport. Not his real one, of course. Kim Chol, it read. One of 4 he carried, each a different shade of the same lie. The backpack on his shoulder held $100,000 in cash, enough to buy time, but never enough to buy peace. The crowd moved around him in currents and eddies, businessmen with their purposeful strides, tourists with their excited chatter, families corralling wayward children, normal people living normal lives. Jong-nam envied them with an intensity that surprised him. What must it be like, he wondered, to board a plane without checking over your shoulder? To use your real name at a hotel? To sleep without wondering if tonight would be the night they finally came for you? He'd been foolish once, young and arrogant, trying to visit Tokyo Disneyland with a forged Dominican passport. Of all the things to lose a kingdom over, the Magic Kingdom. The irony wasn't lost on him. His father had been furious, his younger half-brother Jong-un smug. That had been the beginning of the end, the first domino in a cascade that led him here, to this moment, standing before a machine that would check him in under a name that wasn't his own. The morning crowd seemed thicker than usual, or perhaps that was just his paranoia talking. Exile did things to a man's mind, made shadows seem darker, made every stranger a potential threat. He'd learned to live with the fear, to make it his companion rather than his master. But lately, the feeling had intensified. Messages from old contacts had dried up. Friends in Macau had grown distant. Even the Chinese, who had long tolerated his presence, seemed cooler than before. His reflection caught in the dark screen of the kiosk, a heavy-set man in his 40s, soft where his father had been hard, wearing expensive clothes that couldn't quite disguise the wariness in his eyes. He looked like what he was, a man running out of options, running out of time, running out of places to run. As he began to enter his information, a movement in his peripheral vision made him tense. Just someone passing behind him, nothing more. But his hand instinctively moved toward his jacket pocket where he kept a small canister of pepper spray. Pathetic protection against the resources of a nation-state, but it made him feel marginally less helpless. The kiosk beeped, accepting his false documents without question. Boarding pass printing, flight on time, everything normal, everything routine. Just another traveler heading to a beach resort, indistinguishable from thousands of others. If only that were true. Chapter 2. The Audition. Siti Aisha stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror of the Jakarta boarding house, practicing her smile. Not the tired one she wore at the spa, kneading the knots from strangers' backs for barely enough rupiah to feed her daughter. This was her camera smile, the one she'd been perfecting ever since the man who called himself James had approached her 3 weeks ago. "You have a face for television," he'd said in accented English, sliding a business card across the cafe table. "Japanese production company," he'd explained. "Reality TV, pranks, YouTube." The words had tumbled over each other like promises, each one more golden than the last. She touched up her lipstick with a tube that was nearly empty, making a mental note to buy more if today's filming went well. $200, James had said. More money than she'd see in a month at the spa. All for playing a harmless joke on strangers, smearing baby oil on their faces while hidden cameras captured their reactions. Her phone buzzed. A message from James. "Ready for today? Big surprise. Very important episode." Aisha's stomach fluttered with equal parts excitement and anxiety. She'd already done 3 practice runs in Jakarta shopping malls, each one earning her enough to send extra money home to her daughter. The victims had all laughed it off once James explained about the show. Japanese people love this kind of humor, he'd assured her. You're going to be famous. Famous. The word tasted sweet on her tongue, like the candy she could rarely afford to buy her daughter. Siti Aisha, former factory worker, former masseuse, future YouTube star. It sounded like a fairy tale, the kind she'd stopped believing in years ago when her husband left and reality set in with all its sharp edges and empty stomachs. But James had shown her videos on his phone, other girls doing similar pranks, the view counts in the millions. That could be you, he'd said, and for the first time in years, she'd allowed herself to hope. The boarding house was thick with the smell of cooking oil and disappointment. Girls like her came to Jakarta with dreams and left with calluses, if they left at all. But Aisha was different now. She had James's business card, had the cash from the practice runs folded carefully in her purse. She had a ticket out. Her roommate stirred on the narrow bed they shared. Ling, who worked at the same spa, who'd warned her about men with promises and business cards. If it sounds too good to be true, Ling had said, but Aisha had stopped listening. Ling didn't understand. Ling hadn't seen her daughter's face the last time Aisha visited, that the way she'd looked at the other children's new school shoes with eyes full of want. Another message from James. Car waiting outside. Time to fly to Kuala Lumpur. Big day. Kuala Lumpur. She'd never been to Malaysia before. James had handled all the arrangements, tickets, documents, even a new outfit for filming. The white LOL sweatshirt hung on the back of the door, still wrapped in plastic. Costume, James had called it, very important for the show's brand. Aisha gathered her few belongings, moving quietly so as not to wake Ling. At the door, she paused, looking back at the dingy room that had been her world for the past year. After today, everything would be different. After today, she'd be somebody. Outside, a black car idled at the curb, its windows tinted dark as secrets. James waved from the passenger seat, his smile as wide and promising as the future he'd painted for her. She climbed in, not noticing how quickly the locks clicked shut behind her. Chapter 3. The Other Woman. Du Huang sat in the Hanoi Cafe, her fingers drumming against the cheap formica table in a rhythm that matched her racing heart. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but she hadn't come here for the coffee. She'd come for the man sitting across from her, the one who called himself Mr. Chang and spoke Vietnamese with a North Korean accent he didn't quite manage to hide. You were magnificent in the audition video, Chang said, sliding a tablet across the table. On the screen, Huang watched herself performing the monologue she'd prepared for Vietnam Idol 2 years ago. The rejection had stung then. Now it might be her salvation. How did you get this? She asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Chang smiled, the expression never quite reaching his eyes. We have our ways. We've been watching you, Miss Huang. You have exactly what we're looking for. The phrase should have unsettled her. Instead, it thrilled her. Someone had been watching. Someone had noticed. After years of failed auditions, of serving drinks to businessmen who looked through her like she was furniture, someone had finally seen her. Tell me about the show again, she said, leaning forward. Hidden camera program, very popular in Japan and Korea. We need someone who can act natural, someone the camera loves. He gestured at the tablet. Someone like you. The money he mentioned made her dizzy. Enough to move out of the room she shared with 3 other girls. Enough to take acting classes, real ones, not the community center workshops she could barely afford. Enough to become who she was meant to be. What exactly would I have to do? Simple pranks, nothing harmful. Tomorrow, you fly to Malaysia for filming. We've prepared everything. He produced an envelope, thick with cash and documents. Consider this an advance on your salary. Huang's hand trembled as she reached for it. Inside, more money than she'd ever held at once. Plane tickets. A passport with her photo, but a slightly different name, standard for television, Chang explained, for legal reasons. There's another girl, Chang continued. Indonesian. You'll be working together, but filming separately. Competition, you understand. We want to see who performs better on camera. Competition. The word sparked something in Huang's chest. She'd been competing all her life, for roles, for attention, for a chance to be more than another pretty face in a city full of them. This time, she'd win. What's the prank exactly? Oil on the face. Baby oil. You approach strangers, cover their eyes playfully, apply the oil, apologize, and leave. Our hidden cameras capture their reaction. Very funny, very harmless. Chang showed her videos on his phone. Girls in other countries doing similar pranks, the victims laughing once they learned about the show. It looked easy. It looked fun. It looked like her ticket out of obscurity. I'll need you to practice first, Chang said. Tomorrow morning, before the flight. Meet my associate, Mr. Rai. He'll run through the routine with you. Why baby oil specifically? Chang's smile widened. It shows up better on camera. The shine, very visual. That made sense. Everything about television was visual. Huang had learned that the hard way, had been told her face was too round, her nose too flat, her dreams too big for her talent. But Chang saw something different. Chang saw a star. I'll do it, she said, the words escaping before she could reconsider. Excellent. Chang stood, leaving the envelope on the table. Your flight is at 6 a.m. Don't be late. This is your big chance, Miss Huang. As he left, Huang clutched the envelope to her chest, feeling the future inside it, crisp and full of possibility. Tomorrow, she'd be on a plane to Malaysia. Tomorrow, her new life would begin. The coffee shop's fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows on the wall. For just a moment, they looked like reaching hands. Chapter 4. The Handlers. In the service department overlooking Kuala Lumpur's skyline, 4 men sat around a table littered with photographs, floor plans, and small glass vials that caught the morning light like captured screams. They spoke in Korean, their voices low and methodical, planning death with the casual efficiency of men ordering lunch. Ri Ji-hyun, the one the women knew as James, held up one of the vials between thumb and forefinger. Inside, a clear liquid sloshed gently, innocent as water, deadly as a bullet. Binary agent, he said, harmless separately, lethal when combined. The others nodded. They'd rehearsed this operation for months in Pyongyang, using political prisoners as test subjects. The Supreme Leader himself had overseen the final demonstration, watching through one-way glass as the condemned man's muscles seized and his lungs forgot how to breathe. Kim Jong-un had smiled then, that soft, satisfied smile that meant someone, somewhere was about to die. The women? Asked Hong Song-hak, the one Huang knew as Mr. Chang. In position, they believed the story completely. Ri's contempt for the women was evident in his tone. Useful idiots, nothing more. The kind of people who existed to be used by those with true purpose. Oh Jong-gil spread the airport blueprints across the table, tracing routes with his finger. Target arrives at 8:55. Terminal 2. We've confirmed his flight from Macau. They'd been tracking Kim Jong-nam for months, following the electronic breadcrumbs of his credit cards, his phone calls, his increasingly desperate attempts to maintain his lifestyle. The man was soft, corrupted by Western excess, an embarrassment to the Kim bloodline. His elimination had been ordained by the Supreme Leader himself, spoken in that quiet voice that brooked no questions. The women will strike here, O continued, marking the check-in area. Aisha first with component A, then Huang with component B. 15 seconds between them, no more. And they won't be harmed? This from Ri Jae-nam, the youngest of them, still new to wet work. Ri Ji-hyun shrugged. They'll wash their hands immediately after. We've trained them to do so, whether they're fast enough. He let the sentence hang like a corpse. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The women thought they were applying baby oil, would handle their components with the carelessness of innocence. They'd approach the target naturally, playfully, their beauty and apparent harmlessness disarming any suspicion. Hidden among the crowd, the handlers would film everything, not for YouTube, but for proof to bring back to Pyongyang. Transportation? Hong asked. 4 separate flights out, all within an hour of the strike. By the time the target is symptomatic, we'll be in international airspace. They'd leave the women behind, of course. Someone had to be caught. Someone had to pay. Better 2 foolish girls than 4 trained operatives. The women had served their purpose the moment they agreed to participate in a prank show. Everything after that was just choreography. Ri Ji-hyun checked his phone. Messages from both women confirming they were ready, excited, grateful for the opportunity. He felt nothing for them, these creatures who sold their dignity for a handful of dollars and a promise of fame. They reminded him of the capitalist world itself, vain, greedy, infinitely manipulable. "Remember," he said, distributing the vials with practiced care, "once you give them their components, no further contact. We're film crew, nothing more. When the authorities come, we know nothing, saw nothing, were never here." The others nodded. They'd all been through the camps, been forged in the crucible of the Supreme Leader's will. They knew how to disappear, how to become smoke and shadow and rumor. Outside, Kuala Lumpur awakened to another tropical morning, unaware that death had taken up residence in a luxury apartment, that murder was about to wear the mask of comedy. "For the glory of the Democratic People's Republic," Rhee said, raising his coffee cup. "For the Supreme Leader," the others echoed. The vials clinked gently as they were packed away, their contents patient as poison, ready as revenge. Chapter 5. The Rehearsal. The morning of February 13th arrived wrapped in Malaysian heat and the peculiar tension that precedes tragedy. In her hotel room, Siti Aisyah stood before the mirror, adjusting the LOL sweatshirt for the dozenth time. The letters stretched across her chest like a cosmic joke she wasn't in on yet. Her hands trembled slightly as she applied the baby oil to her palms, practicing the motion James had shown her. Quick swipe across the eyes, playful giggle, swift apology, then disappear into the crowd. She'd done it 3 times in Jakarta malls, each performance earning her more money than a month at the spa. But this felt different. The hotel was nicer, the cash advance larger, James's smile tighter. A knock at the door made her jump. "Ready, superstar?" James called out in his strange accent. She opened the door to find him holding a small bottle, different from the baby oil she'd been using. "Special formula for today," he explained. "Shows up better on our new cameras. Very expensive, very important you use only this." The liquid looked the same, felt the same as she rubbed it between her palms. Maybe slightly more slippery. "It tingles," she said. "That's the minerals, good for the skin. Models use it." He watched her practice the motion again. "Perfect. Remember, wash your hands immediately after. Very important." "Why? The oil can damage clothing if left on too long. We don't want you ruining that nice sweatshirt." Across the city, in another hotel, Doan Thi Huang received similar instructions from Mr. Chang. Her bottle was identical, her directions the same. She practiced in front of her mirror, working on her surprised expression, her apologetic bow. This was acting, real acting, even if the audience didn't know they were watching a performance. "You're a natural," Chang assured her. "The camera will love you." Huang beamed at the praise. All those rejections, all those nights serving drinks to grabby businessmen, all of it had led to this moment. She thought of the other girls from her village, stuck in factories, or married to men their fathers chose. Today, she'd prove she was different, special, destined for more. Neither woman knew about the other. The handlers had kept them separated, each believing she was the only actress in this production. "Competition breeds excellence," Rhee had explained to his team. "Let them each think they're the star." At 8:30 a.m., both women arrived at the airport in separate cars. The terminal buzzed with morning travelers, a perfect crowd to get lost in. Aisha spotted James near a coffee shop, his phone up as if filming. He gave her a subtle nod. Showtime approaching. Huang saw Chang by the information desk, similarly positioned. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but it was the good kind of fear, the kind actors felt before stepping on stage. The handlers had positioned themselves strategically throughout the terminal. Oh Jong-gil at the currency exchange, Hong Song-hak at the newsstand, Ri Jae-nam in the bathroom, ready to leave immediately after the strike. They'd studied every camera angle, every security position, every possible escape route. At 8:45, Ri Ji-hyun received a text, "Package approaching Terminal 2. He forwarded the message to both women with different words. To Aisha, "Your target is coming. Heavy-set man, expensive clothes, make us proud." To Huang, "Get ready. Look for my signal. This is your moment." The women took their positions, oil-slicked hands hidden in their pockets, hearts racing with anticipation. They thought they were about to become famous. They were right, though not in the way they imagined. In the security office, guards watched their monitors with the bored attention of those who see too much and notice too little. Another day at the airport. Another 1,000 faces passing through their screens. None of them noticed death walking through their terminal, wearing a LOL sweatshirt and a smile practiced in front of a mirror. Chapter 6. The strike time dilated in Kuala Lumpur International Airport at 8:59 a.m., stretching like taffy, each second pregnant with consequence. Kim Jong-nam stood at the check-in kiosk, his fingers working the touchscreen, oblivious to the choreography of death arranging itself around him. Siti Aisha moved first, her body electric with performance anxiety. Through the crowd she glided, the oil slick on her palms, her smile camera-ready. The heavy-set man in expensive clothes stood exactly where James had said he would be. Perfect. She could almost hear the YouTube views tallying up, could almost see her daughter's face when she returned home famous. Peekaboo. The word escaped her lips as her hands covered his eyes, the oil smearing across his face in a motion she'd practiced until it was muscle memory. His body stiffened under her touch. Surprise, she thought, perfect for the cameras. Sorry. She giggled, already backing away, already disappearing into the crowd as James had taught her. Her hands felt strange, tingling more intensely now. Must get to the bathroom, must wash them before they stained her clothes. Jong-nam stood frozen, confusion and disgust warring on his face. The oily residue felt wrong, smelled wrong. His skin began to burn slightly where she'd touched him. Some stupid prank, he thought, reaching for his handkerchief. But before he could wipe his face, "Excuse me," Doanthi Huang appeared like a fever dream, her LOL sweatshirt a mockery of the moment. Her approach was different from Aisha's, more theatrical, arms spread wide like she was embracing a long-lost friend. Her oil-covered hands found his face with practiced precision, adding her component to what was already there. The reaction was instantaneous. Where two harmless liquids met, death bloomed like a poisonous flower. The binary agent activated, VX nerve gas forming on the surface of his skin, absorbing through his pores with horrifying efficiency. Huang was already gone, melting into the crowd, riding high on the adrenaline of performance. She'd nailed it, she knew. Better than the Indonesian girl, whoever she was. Chang would be so pleased. Jong-nam's nervous system began its rebellion within seconds. The signals from his brain scrambled, his muscles receiving contradictory commands. His vision blurred, the airport lights becoming halos of pain. The burning on his face intensified, spreading down his neck like liquid fire. Very painful, he gasped, stumbling away from the kiosk. Very painful, I was sprayed liquid. The first security guard he approached barely looked up from his conversation. Tourist with heartburn, probably. They saw it all the time. But Jong-nam's legs were already betraying him, his gait becoming the shuffle of a man whose body was forgetting how to walk. In the bathroom, Aisha scrubbed her hands frantically, the water turning slightly oily as it swirled down the drain. The tingling was fading, but not fast enough. She dried her hands on paper towels, checked her reflection. Still pretty, still camera-ready. James would be so proud. Huang found a different bathroom, performing the same ritual. The soap felt good, the water better. She thought about the footage Chang must be reviewing, thought about her performance. Had she been natural enough? Playful enough? The other girl had gone first, but Huang was certain she'd been better. The handlers were already moving. Ri Ji-hyun deleted the messages from his phone as he walked toward his gate. Oh Jong-gil purchased a newspaper, his boarding pass tucked inside. Hong Song-hak ordered coffee to go, his eyes never lingering on the commotion beginning near the check-in area. They didn't need to watch. They knew what VX did to a human body, had seen it tested in sterile rooms on condemned men. 15 minutes, 20 at the outside. The women had performed perfectly, their ignorance as much a weapon as the poison they'd carried. By the time security realized this wasn't food poisoning or a heart attack, by the time Jong-nam collapsed in the medical clinic with foam on his lips and his lungs in revolt, 4 planes would be lifting off from Malaysian soil. The prank was over. The murder was just beginning. Chapter 7. The Revelation. The fluorescent lights of the interrogation room hummed with the same sick intensity as those in the airport, and Siti Aisha found herself wondering if all the lights in Malaysia were diseased. She'd been sitting here for 6 hours, maybe 7, time blurring into a nightmare she couldn't wake from. "Tell us again about James," the detective said, sliding a photograph across the metal table. The image was grainy, and pulled from airport security footage, but it was him, James, except the caption underneath read, Ri Ji-hyun, North Korean intelligence. That's not possible, Isia whispered, though the words felt like lies even as she spoke them. He's a Japanese TV producer. He showed me videos. The man you killed, the detective continued, placing another photo beside the first, was Kim Jong-nam, the half-brother of North Korea's supreme leader. Killed. The word hit her like a physical blow. No, it was baby oil. Just a prank. For YouTube. The detective's expression mixed pity with disgust. The baby oil was VX nerve agent, one of the deadliest chemicals known to man. You're lucky you washed your hands when you did. The room spun. Isia gripped the edge of the table, her mind racing back through every interaction with James. The special bottle. The insistence on washing immediately. The way he'd watched her practice, clinical and cold, like a scientist observing a lab rat. In another room, Doan-thi Huang was learning the same terrible truth. Chang's photo stared up at her from the table, Hong Sung-hak, according to the caption. Another North Korean agent, another lie wrapped in promises of fame. I'm an actress, she kept saying, as if the words could make it true. I was acting. It was just a show. But there was no show. There had never been a show. Just two desperate women and four men who'd seen that desperation and shaped it into a weapon. The detectives showed them the airport footage, and both women watched their dreams transform into evidence. There was Isia, covering the victim's eyes. There was Huang, following up with the killing dose. They looked happy in the video, excited. They looked guilty. I didn't know, Aisha sobbed, thinking of her daughter, of the money she'd already sent home, tainted now with blood she hadn't known she was spilling. Please, I didn't know. The Malaysian authorities had moved fast once they'd identified the poison. The airport had been locked down, hazmat teams called in. The women had been easy to find. They hadn't run, hadn't tried to hide. Why would they? They thought they were stars of a prank show, not assassins in an international murder plot. The North Korean agents were gone, of course. Ghosts who'd left nothing behind but two broken women and a corpse in the morgue. The embassy was already denying everything, claiming Kim Jong-nam had died of a heart attack, that this was all a misunderstanding. Huang stared at her hands, the same hands that had touched death and not known it. She'd wanted to be famous, had craved the spotlight with an intensity that had blinded her to every warning sign. Well, she was famous now. Her face would be on every news channel in the world. The girl who'd killed for a YouTube prank that never existed. They'll execute us, Isia said to her lawyer, the court-appointed woman who looked almost as shell-shocked as her client. In Indonesia, they'll execute me for this. You were manipulated, the lawyer replied, but even she didn't sound convinced. How did you defend someone who delivered death with a smile? How did you explain to a jury that sometimes the real criminals were the ones who never touched the weapon? That night, in their separate cells, both women lay awake replaying every moment, looking for the signs they'd missed. The way the men had appeared out of nowhere with perfect offers. The strange insistence on specific routines. The cash that had seemed like generosity, but was really just the price of their ignorance. They'd wanted different things. Isia, her daughter's future. Huang, her name in lights. But they'd both been willing to believe in miracles. Now they knew the truth about miracles. Sometimes they were just murders waiting to happen. Chapter 8. The Shadows That Remain. 2 years later, Siti Aisyah walked free from Kajang Women's Prison, blinking in the Malaysian sunlight like a mole emerging from the earth. The Indonesian government had negotiated, pleaded, and finally succeeded. The charges had been dropped. She was going home. But home to what? The woman who entered that black car in Jakarta was dead. Had died the moment she'd touched Kim Jong-nam's face with poison on her palms. What emerged from prison was something else. A creature who jumped at shadows, who couldn't watch YouTube without nausea, who saw North Korean agents in every stranger's smile. Her daughter barely recognized her. 2 years was a lifetime for a child, and the money Isia had sent, that cursed blood money, had been spent on necessities that now felt like accusations. Every meal it had bought, every piece of clothing, all of it tainted by the man whose lungs had filled with fluid in an airport clinic. Doan-thi Huang lasted another month before her own release, pleading guilty to a lesser charge. 3 years and 4 months, reduced for time served. The Vietnamese government had been less successful in their negotiations, or perhaps they'd tried less hard. She'd wanted fame, after all. She'd gotten it. The world had moved on to other scandals, other assassinations, but for the women, time had crystallized around that morning in February. They were forever the YouTube killers, the idiots who'd murdered for a prank show, the cautionary tale about believing strangers with promises. Huang returned to Vietnam to find her acting dreams not just dead, but radioactive. No one would hire the woman who'd killed Kim Jong-nam, even accidentally. Especially accidentally. Intent could be understood, forgiven eventually. Stupidity was unforgivable. She worked in her family's shop, serving customers who whispered about her when they thought she couldn't hear. The girl who'd wanted to be on TV. The girl who'd touched death and laughed. Some took selfies with her when they recognized her. A different kind of fame than she dreamed of, bitter as VX on the tongue. The North Korean agents had vanished like smoke, protected by a regime that denied everything while celebrating in private. Ri Ji-hyun was rumored to have been promoted. The others had dissolved back into the apparatus of state terror, ready to emerge when needed to find other desperate souls in other airports. At night, both women dreamed the same dream. They were back in the airport, hands slick with oil, approaching the heavy-set man. But in the dream, they could see everything. The fear in his eyes, the other passengers who were all North Korean agents, the cameras that were recording not for YouTube, but for Kim Jong-un's personal collection. In the dream, they tried to warn him, tried to stop themselves, but their bodies moved without their permission, puppets on strings that led all the way back to Pyongyang. They watched themselves commit murder over and over, smiling for cameras that didn't exist, playing roles in a show that was really an execution. Sometimes, Aizia would catch herself washing her hands compulsively, scrubbing until the skin was raw, trying to clean something that had soaked deeper than flesh. The authorities had told her she was lucky. A few seconds more, and the VX would have killed her too. Lucky. As if luck was what you called it when you survived being a weapon. Huang developed a tremor in her hands, slight but persistent. The doctors said it was psychological, but she wondered. What if some of the poison had stayed? What if she was still contaminated, still carrying death in her fingertips? She wore gloves even in summer, afraid to touch anyone, afraid of what her hands had proven capable of. The airport footage lived forever on the internet, uploaded and re-uploaded, analyzed and memed. Two women approaching a man, a playful gesture, a death sentence delivered with a laugh. The ultimate prank, some comments said, the joke that killed. Neither woman could explain why they hadn't seen it coming. The signs had been there, the strange men, the odd requests, the too good to be true payments. But desperation was its own blindness, and hope its own poison. They'd wanted to believe so badly that belief had overridden every instinct. In Pyongyang, Kim Jong-un was said to have watched the footage repeatedly, pleased with the poetry of it. His half-brother, the soft exile who'd embarrassed the family, killed by the softest of weapons, two women who'd thought they were playing. But in Jakarta and Hanoi, in small rooms where the lights buzzed like dying wasps, two women knew the truth. They hadn't been playing. They'd been played. And in the grand game of nations, they'd been nothing but pawns, sacrificed for a victory in a war they hadn't known they were fighting. The YouTube prank that never was had made them famous after all. Famous for being fools, famous for being weapons, famous for teaching the world that sometimes the deadliest poison comes wrapped in promises and wearing a smile. They'd wanted to be stars. Instead, they'd become warnings, living ghosts haunting their own lives, forever trying to wash away a stain that had spread far deeper than skin. In the end, that was the cruelest joke of all.